Welcome back, thanks for tuning into our Reddit cheating stories. Which country are you watching from? State in comment and please subscribe to our channel. Let's dive in. The sterile white walls of the hospital room seemed to press in on Daniel, suffocating him. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor was a relentless drumbeat announcing the inevitable. His father, Thomas, lay frail and ashen in the bed, his breathing shallow and raspy. Daniel gripped his father's hand, the skin papery and thin beneath his own. He hadn't spoken to his father in weeks, not since the argument. But now, here he was, drawn back by the gravity of mortality, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Thomas's eyes flickered open, focusing on Daniel with surprising clarity. A faint smile touched his lips, a ghost of the man Daniel remembered, the strong, jovial patriarch who had built a successful business and a seemingly idyllic family. "Daniel," Thomas croaked, his voice barely a whisper. "Come closer." Daniel leaned in, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew, instinctively, that this wasn't just about saying goodbye. "There's something I need to tell you," Thomas struggled, his brow furrowing with pain. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Daniel waited, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. He had always admired his father, placed him on a pedestal. What could possibly shatter that image now, at the very edge of life? "The children, your children." Thomas gasped, his eyes filled with a desperate plea. The DNA test, it wasn't a mistake. Daniel's blood ran cold. The DNA test. The one he had dismissed as a clerical error, a lab mix-up. The one his wife, Sarah, had vehemently denied the validity of. The one that had revealed, with chilling certainty, that none of his 3 children were biologically his. The world tilted. His carefully constructed reality, the life he had built with Sarah, the love he had poured into his children, all of it teetered on the precipice of collapse. What are you saying?" Daniel choked out, his voice thick with disbelief. Thomas closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. "Sarah, she wouldn't tell you. I had to protect you." He opened his eyes again, a flicker of the old Thomas returning. It started with the bet. The seed of deceit. 50 years earlier, Thomas and his 3 best friends, Richard, Arthur, and David, were inseparable. They were young, ambitious, and brimming with the arrogance of youth. They spent their days working hard and their nights drinking hard, their lives a whirlwind of shared experiences and unspoken camaraderie. One night, fueled by copious amounts of whiskey, the conversation turned to women. Each man boasted of his conquests, exaggerating their charm and prowess. The air thickened with a competitive spirit, a need to prove their worth. Richard, ever the instigator, proposed a bet. "Let's see who can build the perfect family," he declared, his eyes glinting with mischief. "The biggest house, the most beautiful wife, the smartest children. The whole package." The others scoffed, dismissing it as drunken bravado. But Richard persisted, weaving a tapestry of ambition and rivalry. He proposed a point system, points for the size of the house, points for the wife's attractiveness, a subjective measure, of course, destined to cause arguments, and points for the children's academic achievements and overall success. The bet, initially a light-hearted jest, slowly morphed into an obsession. Each man became consumed with the need to win, to outshine his friends. They chased careers relentlessly, striving for wealth and status. They meticulously appraised potential partners, searching for the perfect combination of beauty, intelligence, and breeding. Thomas, always the most grounded of the group, initially resisted the allure of the bet. He saw it as shallow and ultimately pointless. But as time wore on, and he witnessed his friend's relentless pursuit of the perfect life, a seed of doubt began to sprout in his own mind. He didn't want to be left behind. He didn't want to be seen as the loser. Then he met Elizabeth. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind. She possessed an inner grace that captivated him. He fell in love with her, a genuine, heartfelt love that transcended the superficiality of the bet. He married her, confident that he had finally found his happiness. But tragedy struck. Elizabeth developed a rare and aggressive form of cancer. She battled valiantly, but the disease ultimately claimed her life, leaving Thomas heartbroken and adrift. He was a single father to Daniel, a toddler who barely understood the enormity of his loss. The bet, once a distant memory, resurfaced in his mind. The pressure to succeed, to prove himself, intensified. He couldn't let Elizabeth's death derail his life. He had to win. The arrival of Sarah. Years passed. Daniel grew into a young man, independent and driven. Thomas, meanwhile, threw himself into his business, building a successful construction company. He dated sporadically, but none of the women he met resonated with him. He was still haunted by Elizabeth's memory, unable to fully commit to another relationship. Then he met Sarah. She was ambitious, beautiful, and fiercely independent. She was everything Elizabeth wasn't. Thomas was initially drawn to her confidence and her unapologetic pursuit of success. He saw her as a partner, someone who could help him achieve his goals. He knew, deep down, that he didn't love her the way he had loved Elizabeth. But he convinced himself that love was overrated. Compatibility and shared ambition were more important. He proposed, and she accepted. Their marriage was a business arrangement as much as a love affair. They worked together, building their empire. They presented a united front to the world, a picture of perfect domesticity. But behind closed doors, their relationship was strained. They argued frequently, their ambitions clashing. Sarah made it clear that she wanted children. Thomas, still grieving Elizabeth's loss and focused on his career, was hesitant. But Sarah was insistent. She saw children as an essential part of the perfect family, a crucial element in winning the bet. Thomas reluctantly agreed. They tried for years, but Sarah couldn't conceive. They underwent countless fertility treatments, each failure adding to the growing tension between them. Then, Sarah dropped a bombshell. She confessed to having an affair. She claimed it was a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness. But Thomas suspected there was more to it. He was furious, devastated, and utterly humiliated. His perfect facade was crumbling around him. The bet, which he had tried so hard to win, was slipping through his fingers. He confronted Sarah, demanding to know the truth. She initially denied it, but eventually, she broke down and confessed. The affair had been ongoing for months. She had been seeing another man, a colleague from her office. And that wasn't all. She was pregnant. Thomas was enraged. He wanted to divorce her, to expose her betrayal to the world. But then, a twisted idea took root in his mind. An idea born out of desperation and a desperate desire to win. He wouldn't divorce her. He would stay with her. He would raise the child as his own. And he would use it to win the bet. The web of lies. Thomas convinced himself that he was doing the right thing. He told himself that he was protecting his family, preserving his reputation. He buried his anger and resentment, forcing himself to accept Sarah's infidelity. When the first child, Emily, was born, Thomas showered her with love and attention. He doted on her, pushing her to excel in school and extracurricular activities. He saw her as his ticket to victory. Sarah, meanwhile, remained distant and aloof. She seemed to have little interest in motherhood. She left the majority of the childcare to Thomas and the nannies they hired. Over the next few years, Sarah gave birth to 2 more children, Michael and Olivia. Thomas treated them all the same, showering them with affection and pushing them to achieve. He never questioned their paternity, choosing to remain blissfully ignorant. He convinced himself that he was happy. He had a beautiful wife, 3 successful children, and a thriving business. He had achieved the perfect life, the life he had always dreamed of. He had won the bet. But beneath the surface, the resentment festered. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was living a lie. He knew that the children weren't truly his. He knew that Sarah had betrayed him. He knew that his entire life was built on a foundation of deceit. The burden of his secret grew heavier with each passing year. He became withdrawn and irritable, his relationship with Sarah strained to the breaking point. He tried to confide in his friends, but he couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth. He was afraid of their judgment, afraid of the shame. The unraveling. Years later, Daniel, now a successful architect, decided to explore his ancestry. He purchased a DNA testing kit online, hoping to uncover some family secrets. He encouraged his parents to participate, framing it as a fun and harmless activity. Thomas reluctantly agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to finally put his doubts to rest. He hoped that the test would confirm his paternity, that it would prove that he was wrong all along. The results came back a few weeks later. Daniel's results were unremarkable, revealing a typical European lineage. But Thomas's results were shocking. The test revealed that he was not biologically related to Emily, Michael, or Olivia. Thomas was stunned. He had suspected it all along, but seeing it in black and white was devastating. His worst fears had been confirmed. He had been living a lie for decades. He confronted Sarah, demanding an explanation. She initially denied it, claiming that the test was inaccurate. But when Thomas presented the evidence, she broke down and confessed. The children weren't his. None of them. She had used artificial insemination, choosing donors she believed would produce intelligent and successful offspring. She had done it all to win the bet. Thomas was furious. He felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly broken. He couldn't believe that Sarah had been capable of such deceit. He couldn't believe that he had been so blind. He wanted to divorce her, to expose her treachery to the world. But he hesitated. He thought of the children, who were now adults with their own lives and families. He didn't want to shatter their world. He didn't want to be responsible for their pain. He decided to keep the secret, to protect his family. He told Daniel that the test was a mistake, a lab error. He convinced himself that it was the right thing to do. But the weight of his secret continued to crush him. He became increasingly isolated and despondent. He knew that he couldn't carry the burden of his lie forever. The deathbed confession. Back in the sterile hospital room, Thomas struggled to catch his breath. He looked at Daniel, his eyes filled with remorse. "I'm so sorry, Daniel," he whispered. "I should have told you sooner. You deserve to know the truth." Daniel was reeling. He couldn't comprehend the enormity of his father's confession. His entire life had been a lie. The family he had known and loved was a carefully constructed facade. "Why?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. "Why did you do it?" Thomas closed his eyes, the memories flooding back. "The bet," he croaked. "It consumed us. We were so focused on winning that we lost sight of what was important. I should have loved you all unconditionally. I should have been honest with you. I failed you all." Daniel was silent, struggling to process his father's words. He looked at the frail man lying in the bed, the men he had always admired, and felt a surge of pity. His father had been a victim of his own ambition, a prisoner of his own lies. "What about Sarah?" Daniel asked, his voice strained. "Did she know?" Thomas nodded weakly. "She orchestrated it all. She wanted to win the bet more than anything." Daniel was speechless. He couldn't imagine the depths of Sarah's deception. He had always seen her as a strong and independent woman, but he had never realized the extent of her ambition. "I need to tell them," Daniel said, his voice firm. "Emily, Michael, Olivia. They deserve to know the truth." Thomas shook his head weakly. "No," he whispered. "Please, Daniel. Don't tell them. It will destroy them. Let them live their lives in peace." Daniel hesitated. He understood his father's concerns, but he couldn't reconcile himself to the idea of keeping the secret. He couldn't live with the lie. "I don't know, Dad," he said, his voice filled with doubt. "I need time to think." Thomas closed his eyes, his breathing becoming more shallow. "Please, Daniel," he whispered. "Promise me you won't tell them. Promise me you'll protect them." Daniel looked at his father, his heart breaking. He saw the pain in his eyes, the regret etched on his face. He knew that his father was dying, and he couldn't bear to deny him his last wish. "I promise, Dad," Daniel said, his voice choked with emotion. "I won't tell them. I'll protect them." Thomas sighed, a look of relief washing over his face. He squeezed Daniel's hand weakly, his grip already fading. "Thank you, Daniel," he whispered. "Thank you." He closed his eyes and took a final, shuddering breath. The heart monitor flatlined. Thomas was gone. The aftermath. Daniel sat by his father's bedside for hours, numb with grief and disbelief. He replayed the conversation in his mind, trying to make sense of it all. He couldn't believe that his entire life had been a lie. He thought of Sarah, his stepmother, the woman he had always respected. He couldn't reconcile the image of the strong and independent woman he knew with the manipulative and deceitful person his father had described. He thought of Emily, Michael, and Olivia, his siblings. He loved them dearly, and he couldn't imagine the pain they would feel if they learned the truth. He thought of his promise to his father. He had vowed to protect them, to keep their secret. But could he live with the lie? Could he bury the truth and pretend that everything was normal? He knew that he couldn't. He had to tell them. They deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. He left the hospital and drove home, his mind racing. He found Sarah in the living room, reading a book. She looked up as he entered, her expression guarded. "How is he?" she asked, her voice devoid of emotion. "He's gone," Daniel said, his voice flat. Sarah nodded, her face impassive. "I expected it." Daniel stared at her, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "He told me," he said. "He told me everything." Sarah's eyes widened, a flicker of fear flashing across her face. "Told you what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "About the bet," Daniel said. "About the children. About everything." Sarah was silent for a moment, her face pale. Then, she sighed and looked away. "I suppose it was inevitable," she said, her voice resigned. "How could you do it?" Daniel asked, his voice filled with anger and pain. "How could you lie to us all for so long?" Sarah shrugged. "I did what I had to do," she said. "I wanted to win." "Win what?" Daniel asked, his voice incredulous. "A stupid bet. You destroyed our family for a bet." "It wasn't just a bet," Sarah said. "It was about proving myself. It was about being the best. I couldn't let Thomas win." Daniel stared at her, speechless. He couldn't comprehend her twisted logic. He couldn't believe that she had valued a meaningless competition over the happiness of her family. "I'm going to tell them," Daniel said, his voice firm. "Emily, Michael, Olivia. They deserve to know the truth." Sarah shook her head. "Please, Daniel," she said, her voice pleading. "Don't do it. You'll ruin their lives." "They have a right to know," Daniel said. "I can't keep lying to them." Sarah sighed. "Fine," she said. "Do what you want. But don't expect me to apologize. I have no regrets." Daniel turned and walked away, his heart heavy. He knew that telling his siblings the truth would be the hardest thing he had ever done. But he also knew that it was the right thing to do. The revelation. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotion. Daniel gathered his siblings together, each with their own families and lives, and told them everything. He revealed the bet, Sarah's infidelity, and the truth about their paternity. The reaction was explosive. Emily, the eldest, was the most devastated. She had always idolized Thomas, seeing him as the perfect father. To learn that he wasn't her biological father, and that her entire life had been a lie, shattered her world. Michael, the middle child, was angry. He felt betrayed by both Thomas and Sarah. He struggled to reconcile the image of his parents with the deceitful people they had been. Olivia, the youngest, was the most understanding. She had always sensed that something was amiss in their family. She accepted the truth with a quiet resignation. The siblings grieved, raged, and wept. They questioned their identities, their relationships, and their entire family history. They struggled to come to terms with the fact that their lives had been built on a foundation of lies. Daniel tried to support them, to offer comfort and understanding. He knew that he couldn't undo the damage that had been done, but he hoped that they could find a way to move forward together. The repercussions. The revelation of the truth had far-reaching consequences. Emily divorced her husband, unable to trust him after learning about her own parents' infidelity. Michael cut off all contact with Sarah, unable to forgive her betrayal. Olivia sought therapy, struggling to cope with the emotional fallout. The siblings' relationships with each other also changed. They grew closer, bonding over their shared experience. They found solace in each other's company, sharing their pain and offering support. They also reassessed their lives, reevaluating their priorities and their values. They realized that the pursuit of success and perfection was meaningless without genuine love and connection. Daniel, meanwhile, struggled to cope with the aftermath of his father's confession. He felt guilty for keeping the secret for so long, but he also knew that he had done the right thing by telling his siblings the truth. He began to question his own life, his own ambitions, and his own relationships. He realized that he had been living a life that was dictated by his father's expectations, rather than his own desires. He decided to make a change. He quit his job as an architect and started his own business, designing sustainable and affordable housing. He wanted to make a difference in the world, to use his talents to help others. He also reconnected with his wife, Sarah, whom he had been drifting apart from. He realized that he had been neglecting her, focusing on his career rather than their relationship. He apologized for his mistakes and vowed to be a better husband. The legacy. Years passed. The siblings continued to grapple with the fallout of their parents' deception. They attended therapy, worked through their anger and pain, and slowly began to heal. They forged new relationships, built on honesty and trust. They learned to accept their past, to forgive their parents, and to move forward with their lives. They also created a new legacy, one that was based on love, compassion, and authenticity. They taught their children the importance of honesty, integrity, and the value of genuine connection. Daniel, meanwhile, found fulfillment in his new career. He built a successful business, providing affordable and sustainable housing to low-income families. He was proud of the work he was doing, knowing that he was making a positive impact on the world. He also strengthened his relationship with Sarah. They rediscovered their love for each other, building a deeper and more meaningful connection. They never forgot the pain and betrayal of the past, but they refused to let it define them. They chose to focus on the present, to cherish their loved ones, and to create a future filled with hope and joy. The bet, the lies, and the deception had left an indelible mark on their lives. But they had emerged from the ashes, stronger and more resilient than ever before. They had learned that the pursuit of perfection was a fool's errand, and that true happiness could only be found in genuine love, honesty, and connection. And so, the legacy of Thomas and Sarah, the legacy of a family built on lies, was ultimately transformed into a legacy of truth, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The weight of the genome, the burden of their inherited past, had finally been lifted, allowing them to embrace a future free from the shackles of deceit. They had learned that family wasn't just about blood, but about love, acceptance, and the unwavering commitment to stand by each other, no matter what. They had finally created the perfect family, not in the superficial sense of the bet, but in the profound and meaningful sense of unconditional love and unwavering support. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What part shocked you the most? And if you love stories like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.